Greetings, MGMT 420 organizational behavior students. This is an introductory video to Chapter 12, chapter on leadership. Leadership, of course, is one of the key principles of management. As you learned in your Principles of Management course, Management 300, the basic principles of management are planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Leadership is very important. When you guys graduate with the degrees in management, either this semester or maybe in the fall or next spring, when companies make you offers and you get hired as a manager, to a significant extent, the value added you provide to those companies will be your abilities as a leader. Managers are expected to lead at all levels. And your ability to be a good leader will be important, maybe decisive in terms of how well your career develops, whether you get promoted and rise up through the ranks of organizations. So leadership is a very important topic, arguably the most important topic in organizational behavior. What are some of the ideas and concepts about leadership that you're going to learn about in this chapter? Well, the first thing you're going to learn is that, unfortunately, there is a lot that is still unknown about leadership in organizations. Even though literally thousands of articles and books have been written about the topic of leadership by many experts in the area, both professors in business and also executives, people who have worked as leaders in large corporations. Basically, everyone who's either studied leadership or who has been an actual leader has at one time or another shared their thoughts and ideas about what makes a good leader. Nevertheless, there's still a lot that we don't know about it. There is no one particular approach to leadership that has been scientifically verified as the best way to be a leader. What that means is there are a lot of competing ideas out there. And what you need to learn about are, what are the competing ideas that have at least some support for them. So you'll learn about some basic approaches to leadership. There are three basic perspectives on leadership. There's the trait approach to leadership, which basically argues that good leaders are born, not made, in the sense that if you're going to be a good leader, you have to be born with certain innate traits or characteristics. If you have those traits or characteristics that you inherited from your parents, then you will be a good leader. If you don't have those traits or characteristics, well, then you just didn't win the genetic lottery and you won't be a good leader. The good news is not a whole lot of these traits have panned out in research. The great bulk of research on leadership shows that traits simply do not matter very much in determining who is likely to be a good leader or not a good leader. There are a couple traits that do have an impact on leader effectiveness, and you'll learn about what those are. There's also what's called the behavioral approach to leadership. The behavioral approach to leadership can be summed up in the phrase, effective leaders are made, not born. Because the idea here is that what makes a leader effective is how they act or behave towards their subordinates. It's not your innate physical or psychological characteristics that matter, it's how you act. And since actions and behaviors can be learned, that means that virtually anybody can be trained or educated in what it means to be a good leader. The problem, though, is that those who study leadership from a behavioral perspective do not necessarily agree on exactly what those behaviors are. So there have been a proliferation of ideas from a behavioral point of view about exactly what kinds of actions leaders should take, how they should lead their subordinates. Some researchers argue for what we might call a iron fist approach to leadership. The ideal leader is kind of like a military drill sergeant, someone who is very hard and firm, a disciplinarian who doesn't take any nonsense from their subordinates, who expects to be listened to and obeyed in whatever they say or do. Other researchers argue that that's a bad approach, that a leader should use a much more velvet glove kind of approach. A leader should be kind and friendly and affable towards his or her subordinates. Should try to build strong emotional relationships with subordinates so that they can feel them, understand them better. And so these kinds of arguments go back and forth, and you'll learn about that as well. You'll also learn about what are called contingency or situational approaches to leadership. These theories or approaches to leadership argue that the best way for a leader to behave towards subordinates is contingent upon or depends upon the characteristics of the work environment or the work situation. So, basically under different kinds of work circumstances, different approaches to leadership might be more or less effective. So the implication here is that a manager has to be adaptable or flexible. They have to learn a broad variety of leader behaviors so that they can implement them under changing circumstances. Finally, in the chapter, you'll learn something about followership. Historically, there hasn't been a lot of emphasis within the management field on followership, but that is changing. Researchers and business people are investigating, what makes an employee or a subordinate a good follower, meaning an effective follower. And that's important because really, unless you're the CEO of a corporation or the entrepreneur, the owner, in other words, unless you're the person at the very top of the organizational hierarchy, then not only are you a leader, but you are also a follower. It means you have a boss. If you have a boss, if there's someone above you in the organizational chain of command, then you are a follower. And whether you get to be a leader at a higher level of the organization may very well depend on how effective you are as a follower or a subordinate. So you'll learn about some of the characteristics of good followership as well. All right. You realize that the questions that I posted related to Chapter 12 are due on April 15th. I hope that everyone is staying safe and healthy in the face of the coronavirus. Please follow the latest guidelines, social distancing. What I'm doing, I'm telling you what I'm doing. I'm staying indoors. I'm just staying in my house as much as possible. I'm only going outside into public areas when absolutely necessary, and I'm doing my best to reduce those. Basically, even when it comes to like groceries, I'm getting them delivered, or I'm doing like the Walmart or Target pickup, so I don't have to go into the store and breathe in the air that might have the virus in it, or touch things that might have the virus. Just trying to do everything I can to minimize the chances of getting the virus, and I hope everyone else is as well. But the important thing is, to follow whatever the latest CDC, guidelines are in that respect. All right. Good luck with the questions.